Computer. So welcome everyone. We're here just after the Laredo Fall Con, which some people were there, and I know several of our regulars have said they can't make it, so I'm going to record this for Leah and those others of you who are busy unpacking your suitcases and just getting your brains around what's happening locally now that you've been in the national arena. So this is the Brainstorm Lab for Soul Matters. The theme is trust for February, and it's just, as always, I always say, it blows my mind that here we are in November thinking about Valentine's.
Yeah.
And, you know, Susan B. Anthony's birthday and all this. However, it always helps to plant these seeds because, as we know, religious education is both controlled chaos and an ocean liner. And it's so hard to make that ocean liner jerk around and move real fast. So if we start thinking about, oh yeah, we want to do this in February, then the newsletter comes out in January, we're all ready to write that newsletter article and ask for the stuff. So just to start your thinking, so trust for the little ones. I'm always a proponent of bringing animals in. I don't think children get enough animals and clay, personally. You know,
Those two particular things.
Those two particular things. Yeah, everything else, you know, love, trust, possibility, that's good. But animals and clay, big kids too, if you ever want to surprise them, do it in a youth group meeting too. But anyway, I diverge, as I always do. So for trust, I'm thinking about coming out of your shell and trusting life. And who better to illustrate that than some shy little animal? You know, a turtle coming out slowly. You can just imagine some big, beautiful desert tortoise that someone has as a pet. And you've asked for them to bring it in February, and you've got that newsletter in January, so you're covering all your bases. Somebody's going to have a tortoise or hermit crabs or a rabbit even. I could have a little vision of a rabbit puppet who's very, very shy, you know, and doesn't, you know. So there's that trusting life enough to come out of your shell or your hole, which of course it's Groundhog Day. So if you get a groundhog puppet, all that much better, but I didn't think there'd be too many groundhog pets. So anyway, there's one thing. So that's why I do this so early, so you guys get the packet in time to get these things rolling. So my 4 buckets, you might have seen the email. Let me just find this. All right, 4 buckets of trust. So the first bucket I think of in terms of trusting life, coming out of your shell, doing a whole sort of session where I think of it almost as the introvert session. Let's honor our quieter children, the ones who hide behind their parents' legs. And there's a wonderful book that is talked about, and of course I forget the name of it. I already stuck it in the packet, and I do like Einstein says, which is as soon as I write it down, I forget about it. But it's about the value that these introverted children bring to us. And it's good for the extroverted children to read the story as well as the introverts, because the extroverted children, according to the reviews of this book, it's called The Invisible Boy. They suddenly understand there's a whole different way of looking at life other than being extroverted and out there. And since I'm now married to an extrovert, I'm married to an introvert, I understand this more quieter approach to life. It's just lovely. So trust in life, come out of your shell, sort of a Groundhog Day tortoise kind of thing. Then there's offering trust on Valentine's Day. So that Sunday before the 14th probably is a Wednesday, so the 10th. I just don't think we can ignore that it's Valentine's Day, love and compassion. for children and families. You know, Scott's like rolling his eyes. He's like, can't you think of another angle? I'm like, these are children, Scott. We've got to do Valentine's Day. You can't just run over it. So offering trust and pulling apart the role of trust in love for Valentine's Day. So I watched a video called The Anatomy of Trust by Brene Brown, where she started getting my thought process going. So things we can do to offer trust. I'm talking a lot, but I'm planting your brains, right? Then trusting each other. So I think it'd be really nice to revisit covenant and trusting each other in February. That's about midway through the year. So you've got new kids who've come in. You might have made a covenant in September, but that seems like a long time ago. So I'm sort of going in that direction. And then the final bucket is trusting yourself. And that's something Brene Brown talks about. You can't really be trustworthy unless you trust yourself. And that's like, for the children, it might be things about intuition and safety. So any spark of ideas yet?
Sure. I know that we'll be doing our Surprise Pals program during that time. We'd always like to have it go over the Valentine's holiday so that they can share Valentines with their pals. Mm-hmm. And that's a way that you build community and intergenerationally, and they get to meet the reveal party is not until March, but we do Surprise Pals. And if somebody, it's a little bit difficult to get it going, to take care of, to incorporate Valentine's if you haven't started it already. I mean, I've got people starting to recruit adult pals starting in December. Oh. So it takes a little while to get everything together, but that is one thing that we'll be doing, and there might be a way to kind of work that in. I also think this trust part, I mean, for me, I think about vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And how, you know, that's what you need in order to build trust, is to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And so I think that might be something that we could focus on, and maybe talk a little bit about Black History Month and talk about what it means for a person of color to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. and to kind of how white people can earn trust. Mm-hmm. By being an ally and offering safety and advocating. So that's a whole other kind of sphere that I'm thinking about with trust and using that kind of anti-racism lens. Trying to think what else. Well, and then just the embodiment of of all the different kinds of trust exercises that there are that you do with people when, you need to do the fallback thing or whatever. There could be plenty of little games that you could do where maybe someone's blindfolded or they've lost some sort of sense, and then they have to, trust the other people in the room. And so that there could be a lot of fun with those things. Yeah, I think I have a congregant who has already shared that they want to do some Black History Month stuff. And, so I'll be interested to see what that looks like. And then also if there's a way to maybe talk about some of our Black UUs from history a little bit. And what else I'm thinking right now, but those are the things I'm thinking about. Yeah, because the vulnerability part, I think, is interesting for kids. That it's kind of the opposite of what you think it is. Like, I think safety, trust, it kind of implies a safety aspect. And so how do you also show that you offer safety by being open you know, and by being inclusive and asking people to be with you. So I guess that's kind of where I'm going with that.
I like that. Yeah.
And I imagine the small group packet and the worship packet will definitely touch on those things too for adults. And there's a way to kind of tie that in with kids. I'll mute now.
Ashley or Amber, have any ideas, thoughts, insights?
I was going to mention we do mystery friends, which sounds like the same thing as surprise pals. And we are going to do it so that we start at the beginning of January, and the reveal is the weekend closest to Valentine's Day. So that was something that I was thinking about, and how did I want to work this in? And if there's any way to bridge like January and February themes. So I think trust is a really cool one, being that the kids are building relationships with somebody that they don't know who it is. So that's mostly what I'm thinking about.
Awesome.
Can you remind me what the January theme is? Possibility.
The possibility of being a people of possibility. Sort of goes into what we did last year, which was intention and resolution making, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was the very first Soul Matters theme that we did, because we started in the middle of the year like that.
And I note I'm really liking the surprise pals language. When we used to do this in old congregations I served, we called it secret friends.
Yeah, that's problematic language.
And yeah, as soon as I think that was 91, people looked at each other and said, "Secret friends? Really? We do that?"
Yeah. We have ours go for a fairly long time, because families don't necessarily come people don't necessarily come every Sunday, so you can't. We also have kind of a champion of the project who kind of checks in and knows who's been receiving messages and who hasn't, and kind of just facilitates that a little bit and sends out a few reminders. And the other thing that really helped was what I purchased, basically what's like one of those over-the-door shoe pocket things. And so every child gets a pocket, and then that's where the messages can be left.
Nice. So it doesn't involve going places. And
and it's in a very visible place in the sanctuary, and our RE rooms are in a different building entirely from where the sanctuary is. So, but those children walk past that. Everybody has to walk past the place where we put the pockets. So, yeah.
I like that a lot. So what's the worst that has ever happened? I'm curious.
With surprise pills?
Yeah. We had some awful things happen that just made you wince.
Okay. I've only done it the one time so far. I mean, my home church, my church of origin, did it fairly regularly, and I guess my kids did it a couple times. I don't really recall. I mean, just like anything else, you kind of have to set expectations. So when I do background checks on all the adults, and I send, I do, I kind of have on the form where they enroll to do it, there's some guidelines there about, how do you meet with, and I've told people, I mean, I've had some weird questions. Like there was somebody who said, "Oh, I can't do it, but I'm going to be out of town for those first couple Sundays or whatever. And can this other person be me instead and interact?" And I was just like, no, that's not going to work. We can't bait and switch the kids and have a different pal in the middle of, and so, yeah, it's always an educational process. Any of these things. Yeah.
We have a box that both the kids and the adults put things in, and then someone is distributing them to their mailboxes, which are usually paper bags on a table at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But because we're only doing it for a few Sundays, we try to make sure that if you know you're not going to be at church, just send something. And so it can just be a short little note. And last year was the first year that I did it as well, but my church has been doing it for a while. And so people emailing something that then somebody else can write out has been totally fine.
Yeah. 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 Now this was a situation where somebody was like wanting the child to kind of develop the relationship with one person and then, you know, the other one would take over or whatever. And somehow the kid wouldn't notice. I don't know. It was very strange, but yes, definitely people like, oh, I'm not going to be there this Sunday, but I want my pal to get something. So they'll hand it off to someone else to put in the pocket or whatever. Yeah.
Katie, what are some of the concerns that you came across? Because I also haven't thought about any.
Well, we went through a process in Boulder, when I served Boulder, that there would be so few children signing up that I couldn't get children matched with the adults who wanted to do it. And this is not in a congregation with few children. They had 150 children, but the parents were just not interested in it, making a connection. Even though every Sunday someone would get up and say, oh my gosh, my secret friend and I have been friends for 10 years, you know, and now she's graduating from high school and we still do things together, that kind of thing. Even though the adults gave their testimony, the new parents were just like, whatever. So the RE committee finally said, we're just going to stop this. But in addition, there were more expectations of course, and this was back in the early 2000s, so I think you guys have your finger on the pulse of what needs to happen. More expectations of, there was a big meal that they revealed, and you sat down after church and had a big luncheon together. And people like, I just don't have the time to have my kids sit there and meet this person. And then
that's so sad.
I know. Maybe, you know, things come and go. Maybe they'll resurrect it. But
those parents need to have a little trust.
Well, yeah, really.
I do think it is a little tricky with the reveal party how you do that. I had matching game pieces where you would have like in a memory game 2 pieces that were the same, and then the surprise the adults would have theirs, and then the children would, upon entering the room, would be given one, and they'd have to go find who their person was. And then we had like some games, kind of like some little carnival games that they could do together to kind of facilitate, or, you know, kind of make and then only till the end did we get the food out.
Yeah.
So they had some moment to visit with one another and do the games and just chat a little bit. And then they had then at the very end, there was a gift, and we set a limit on how much money can be spent on that. And we prompt the parents of the children that they might want to come with a thank you note.
Yeah.
In hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not a easy thing. It requires, and so that's why I have a volunteer who's the kind of coordinator of it, because there's no way.
That's great.
You could do all that. So, yeah.
Like anything that's worth doing.
Yeah.
We had little puzzle pieces. Yeah. I mean, I love the idea, but maybe, I'm going to put this in the packet, probably. You know, when we do the UU connection of the historical and the liturgy and all, I put in the liturgy, for January was the Traveling Chalice by Corinna.
Oh.
Corey. Corey Ness.
She goes by Corey.
She gave us permission to put all of her documents in, so that can be the liturgy for possibility. And then I think I'll put in surprise pals, mystery pals, parentheses, don't call it secret friends.
Yeah, the Traveling Chalice is just going so well. Did I tell you about the little girl that I had?
No, tell us.
I told the parents that we have a private or secret family Facebook page, and they could upload pictures. And this one mom did a video of her child holding an entire worship service with this chalice, and she had a microphone, one of those toy microphones with all these lights in it. He was saying all these things, and at the end she made sure to include, "Join us for coffee and conversation." She had the whole thing down. And,
okay, I need you, if you get permission from her, can you post that? Do you think she would? Well, might go now.
They're a little media shy. I would not. Okay. I don't know if they would be suing it, but I can ask.
Yeah, no, because it is national. I think that would be
good. What was the? Oh, and I use Robin Slaw's bookmarks that she does for Soul Matters. In the box, in the traveling chalice box. So
nice.
That can be prompts for the family.
Well, put that idea up on the Facebook page. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
On the Soul Matters thing. That's a great idea.
And I saw her at FalCon, so I was able to thank her personally for doing that.
Oh, good. Yep. I thought of, in terms of games, movement, nature stuff, I thought a three-legged race would be a nice way of illustrating trust. That you could do it up and down the hall if the weather's not good, or you can go outside and play. But a three-legged race, I mean, you have to coordinate with this. So you guys think of anything else like that, that would be awesome. Movies for both family nights. A lot of us do some kind of family night movie, or youth. The two ones I thought about were A Wrinkle in Time that just came out, and Interstellar. They're both PG-13 and maybe even they're both PG, but I thought for youth that might be a good way to look at trust. The little girl Meg in A Wrinkle in Time is now a multiracial child, and she has to trust in her ability to accomplish all this on her own, as well as there's a whole piece of bullying stuff that's going on in school against her. So she once again has to trust that she can make it through that. And then Interstellar, one of the storylines is that the daughter and the father have this promise going, that the father says, "I will come back to you." And though gravity and time and black hole stuff, he doesn't come back until she's an older woman. But it's an interesting, I think it would be a good conversation prompt about that promise, because promise really has a lot to do with covenant and trust. All right. Is it time to look at our matrix? Let me share my screen and see what we've forgotten. There's the matrix. See, that's what it looks like when I'm working on it. All these blank places. All right, there's our matrix of things that, I got it, thank you. Things that I like to cover when we're looking at the topic. So I say to myself, all right, are there UU core stories or identity things that I need to be thinking about for trust? And I couldn't think of any. So if you guys know of any, that would be great. Are there things in world religions?
Well, I would think for UU identity, there's a lot of trust in our own discernment in UUism that, and kids are really learning to trust their own opinions about things. I feel like that's one of the core things we're trying to do in RE. So that goes with the trust in yourself.
That's
bucket.
Awesome. Yes, yes. You're trusting your intuition. Oh, good connection. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a thing on integrity and trust in Tapestry about the story of Sita, but the story is so hard to swallow. She's just this sort of abused wife of a prince, and no one believes her when she says she's been faithful and she's kidnapped and she's exiled. I can't use it. I just don't think it's appropriate. So I'm not going in that direction with Sita. Things in child and youth culture. Sensory play. I get a sense that there's something about knots and trust and unraveling that we might explore. Liza Earl Centers in Montpelier, Vermont, sent me already a beautiful song called I Will Be Your Solid Rock by Melanie Demore. And I'm putting this in. It's just beautiful. Written by this woman who looks like she's a choir director as well, and some kind of high school choir director. But it was written by her for a person who had, a friend of hers who had cancer. She's saying to her, I will be your solid rock. You can trust me. Life issues. There's a lot of trust about parenting and teens that I'm exploring. I think that's a big thing that happens in teenagehood and the change in parenting. You have to become a coach rather than a real mentor now. Trust in science and math. Woo! Or nature and movement. I talked about the three-legged race. And I'm glad you brought up the whole justice and service thing, because I thought too about what if you can't trust life? How does that lens play out with the theme of trust and multiple intelligences? And Ashley, you might have seen this before, but I am sort of a sci-fi person, so that's why I put the Matrix up there. All right, any other ideas? Having seen the Matrix, individual discernment. I love that.
I guess I kind of also think about what behaviors are there that display or engender trust. It's kind of thinking along those lines to make it kind of concrete, because it's a little bit more difficult to make this one concrete than some of the other themes, I think. Mm-hmm. So I know that we talk about, like, in our class, the classes, when I talk with the teachers, it's like we want to have structure and surprise for our children. We want them to have the things that they are predictable for them so that they can master those things and they can show you that they know what's going to happen in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I wonder if there's a component also for trust around ritual, and that, that when children can see the things that we do repetitively, that we know what's coming next, that gives us trust in the situation or in the process or the people. So consistency and and I think that comes back to covenant too, which you talked about, that you wanted to expand on, that when we hold each other accountable and we behave with one another as we have said we would, that allows for us to trust each other. So yeah,
I like that.
So that kind of also has, those stories of people who kind of followed through and did what they said they would do, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I know there are multiple stories where that's kind of a picture books and such, where that's kind of the theme of, persistence and somebody coming through for someone else because they said they would be there for them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
a little bit of a tangent on it, but I think it kind of reflects that.
Yep. The thing that comes to mind when you're talking right there is Brene Brown's acronym for teasing apart trust that I really liked, and I started thinking about in terms of this concrete, making it concrete. So her acronym spells BRAVING, BRAVING, and she talks about to establish trust, you have to be having good boundaries, so that's your B. You have to be reliable, that you say what you're going to do over and over, and you're reliable. I am going to be there for you, whatever. A is accountability. So if you make a mistake, you own it and you apologize and you make amends. V is what she calls the vault. So you hold confidences to be trustworthy to your friends and to the people around you in a vault. And that also means, and here's the thing that really helped me understand the depth of what she's talking about. Not only do you not share those confidences between, if someone says, please don't tell anyone, you don't tell other people, oh, other gossip that you heard about so-and-so, even though it's not about the person you're talking to. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was real, I think for the high schoolers and their approach to secrets and all this click stuff and who said what where, to really be a place to teach how to be a trustworthy person is a neat thing for us to do as a faith community.
Mm-hmm.
I is integrity, which she separates out into courage over comfort, courage right over fun and fast or easy, and practicing values, not just professing them. Integrity. So I like that. N is non-judgment, and G is generosity of intentions. So her example was, oh, I'm going to call you tomorrow, and then you forget. The person says, well, she probably just forgot. I'll remind her that she said she was going to call me, instead of saying, well, I can't trust her anymore. So I thought that was also good.
There was a kind of this phrase of don't ascribe malice to what just may simply be ignorance, that you don't assume the worst in someone, that they're being intentional in their promise breaking. Yeah. or whatever it may be. That might be another one to bring forth with this, is the whole promise making, promise breaking,
yeah,
renewing. Yeah.
And I think of it too in terms of our justice lens. So as white allies, when we make a mistake,
not needing the perfectionism, but just being willing, and then being able, and then staying away from the defensiveness and just hearing the correction and saying, okay, I'm sorry, I'll try to do better next time.
And for each other, when you said don't assume malice, assume ignorance, I think that also is a way to approach the white supremacy conversation.
I mean, you have everybody, I mean, that's within the context of good boundaries, right? I mean, no one needs to accept unacceptable behavior, but at the same time, you have control over your own reactions to things. If there's anything that you have control over, it's how you react to things. So just be mindful that someone just may not know. And there's a limit to how much you can extend that gratitude, but for for what it's worth, it's sometimes that it's easier on yourself to just think, oh, that person just doesn't know, rather than to think, they hate me. They're doing this because they hate me.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, Amber, you unmuted yourself.
I was thinking about the world religions piece and how trust is so much a part of faith. And I realize that's incredibly broad, but I feel like there are lots of directions you could go, pulling in almost any world religion, say, especially if there are different holidays or high holy days in any of the religions. That might be a really cool connection.
Yes. Well, and when you do a Google search for literature, a lot of it is trust in God. How children can trust in God, 15 ways to help children trust in God. Yeah. Very good point. Just trust that God loves you. Yeah, there's a whole big cloud out there in culture of that. Trust in Jesus. That's why I like looking at this through our own lenses. Good point. Thank you. Oh, there's so much. And then I say, oh, there's 4 Sundays. Okay. Great.
Sort of adding on to that, I've been struggling with how to say this. I want, with a topic like trust, I feel like it's easy to want to focus on like encouraging children to trust, encouraging them to feel safe. But I feel like one of the important things is to cover when, trust has been broken, that it's, how to validate that without, because especially when we're talking about adults speaking to children, often the encouragement is, trust me, it'll be fine. Trust me, go to the swimming class. I know you're scared. Trust me, and we really tend to push them. And I would really love to include some discussion around that of validating, like, I feel like the you approach to that is to let them decide when they're ready to trust whatever it is. Or if there's been a problem, to give them space to have their own process in terms of repairing trust. From the white supremacy lens, the theory is that it's not up to white people to decide when we are trustworthy. It's up to, Black people to decide when we're being trustworthy, And this, the same as in any situation where the trust has been broken, and children who are less powerful are often the ones being pressured to trust. So I don't have any resources for that, but that feels important in the topic. So
I think I've come across some because that's the very language they use to help children trust themselves. It's to help them trust their intuition. And they say, several of the sources said, and they gave an example, almost like your swimming pool example, where, oh, it's going to be fine, don't worry. Instead of acknowledging that this child has an intuition that this might be really scary, and empowering them to express their fear and their scaredness, instead of saying, oh, you'll be fine.
Right. And to me, that goes with the boundaries piece, which I was really happy that you mentioned that. So, allowing them to have their own boundaries, because I feel like you can't have trust if you're not allowed to have boundaries.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And then I get a little nervous about doing something as deep, doing a program as deep as that can be, because of the examples we're seeing on Facebook about someone who takes a session and as a volunteer teacher just doesn't get it and takes it in a totally different situation. Because the discussion we're having about boundaries and trust really is an owl discussion too, isn't it? And those people are trained. And so I get nervous about just saying, okay, here's this delicate, subtle way of looking at trust and boundaries and intuition. And the person who opens his up on their session up on Sunday morning and says, what am I supposed to be doing? I don't know. But yes, I do want to put something in.
I mean, I think you could maybe put a caveat of you know, when you're introducing a particular topic, but I also think that's just something that the religious educator in whichever congregation has to have a good sense of what their volunteers are capable of and how much guidance they need. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of like, are you responsible, Katie, as the curriculum developer, to then kind of determine, you know, who the likely audience may be or who the likely users might, and you know, there's so your own boundary about all that stuff is, you know, it's more, that's more deeply seated in the training that the DRE is offering to his or her volunteers, and you know, and then the training that the Soul Matters people provide to the when you adopt the curriculum, you know. So yeah.
Do you mean I need to trust people? Yep.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, I don't think it hurts to say that. I find that, you know, that you could say this is a particularly sensitive area, and there's a level of maturity that needs to be brought to this. I mean, that could be a note that you could give to the religious educators who are using it to say, be mindful of who would be delivering this information. You know, you know, so many people, it's hard in our denomination to have volunteers who are working with kids have that maturity level. So I don't think your fear is unfounded. I mean,
no, because I know, I myself would say to a new family, some of the best ways of learning about UU is to come and teach RE. And so they walk in and they're like T-0 in terms of understanding all this stuff. And they're like, what are you doing to me?
Yeah, learning at the same time.
Yes.
I wonder if
and some of it is then at least you're giving the volunteer a heads up, like, yeah, you know, you're going to talk about trust, and then this 4-year-old's going to come along and say, well, I don't trust them, they lied.
Yeah.
And then what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah, I used to do that famously, dumping death on somebody who was brand new, and they're like, really? You want me to just do death, huh? With 4-year-olds or something? Yeah.
I mean, I'm just preparing the lessons for this Sunday, and the older class is going to do that new telling of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And like, you need a lot of preparation. You need to get a sense of the room of where kids are at.
Yep.
With this.
Yep.
Is it, you know, and how do you present that so that it's not harming? Yeah, you know, I mean, you have to do that kind of in a gentle way.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
How old are your older class that's going to do this?
Thanksgiving one?
Yeah.
Those kids are like 2nd through 5th grade. We're going to do that.
I always wonder when we talk about these topics, like where the developmental appropriateness is for a lot of these hard conversations. So I was thinking about that with what we were just talking about as well, is like, okay, at some point, like, you don't want to actually address some of these things with kids of a certain age. And I'm not as familiar with as many things. I just know my background in environmental education, that, for example, you don't want to talk with kids about the doom and gloom of environmentalism until 4th or 5th grade, until they're actually old enough to be asking the questions. So then I always have this question of, okay, at which age do we want to let them know that things are happening in the world? And at which age do we actually protect them because it's detrimental to their development? So just curious on a lot of levels with that one.
Yeah, I mean, we're not, the pre-K through 1st grade class is not touching that at all. I mean, they are the kind of overarching theme for us with this theme of memory, for me, and this is what I wrote my column about, was about food and shared meals and recipes that were found, passed down, and talking about, cultural identities and strengthening those from within the family, and how that then helps to bridge to a child's own intercultural skills. And so the story that's read for Wonderbox will be a kind of silly story about cookies and a recipe and, things like that. And then the younger class will just kind of stay in that space, and they'll have fun with Play-Doh and making pretend food. And they'll read another story that's about recipes and silliness. And, but then the older class and the middle school class will talk about how sharing recipes is sharing history, and then what different ways is history shared and by whom, and how does that change the story. And so I haven't seen the book yet. It's coming. And so I will definitely talk with the teacher, and there might be things that, depending on the age of the children in the room, if it skews younger, there might be things that she completely glosses over, that, and you just try to find the positives that still remain in the story about, shared food and shared, how there can be the possibility of multicultural learning, but it all depends. So I think that's why that's an example of this kind of tread gently.
Yeah. Well, and I go back to my own childhood, growing up UU, that sense of understanding that there are other stories and other narratives was part of our indoctrination from kindergarten on. I mean, whether or not you tell the other stories, you just help the children be aware that there's always different lenses to look at this. And there are different ways of seeing the truth. I think that's one of my big takeaways growing up UU. Because you never are given, this is the truth. You just aren't. Yeah. And then in terms of, Amber, your comment about the age appropriateness, here's one of the difficulties. So I did my master's in science. No, I did my master's in developmental psychology back in the 80s. And what we talked about is that by 4 or 5 years old, in terms of faith formation, there's an understanding of death. But it's a bodily understanding. It's not a verbal understanding. And it was reinforced for me by a story that came to me about a family. This is a true story. The mother came and told me that she was pushing her little daughter, Fiona, out of the supermarket, and Fiona just started sobbing uncontrollably, and she thought that something was pinching her. She's 4.5. And finally she said, "Mommy, you're going to die." And that realization it's what I call it, it's an existential truth that you understand at age 4 or 5 years old, almost universally. Maybe it happens at 6, it depends on these things. But that by not talking about death, this is my spiel to these young teachers, by not talking about death, we're giving the preschoolers the information that you shouldn't ask us ever when you reach that existential moment. But of course we do it, I always did death with puppets, because then the little puppet is afraid or wondering instead of the child themselves. Yeah, it's hard to think about these little children, understanding that. And yet, what is faith if it's not that kind of stuff? Well, cool. As always, we are solving the problems of the world in our little brainstorm. Yeah. Yep. So I'm going to end the recording. Rich and good stuff, you guys. I'm going to say bye to our listening audience.